5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I'm Eddie Starr, and this is the College of Rock and Roll Knowledge. Class is now in session. This is where the music and culture that shaped a generation live on, and my own path through the world of rock and roll. Can you hear me, Charles? All right. We worked it out, Mr. Motorbike.
Let me get the speaker here. There we go. How is that now?
It's great.
Okay, perfect.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm doing well.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
So what's new with you?
Let's see, the newest of the newest. I started this electronic music project with one of my best friends of, like 22 years now. We were in a band together years ago, and over the years, he's become this amazing recording engineer, record producer, runs live sound for a lot of venues, and has his own recording studio. And so both of us weren't doing anything musically. He just finished a record, and he was telling me like, that's it, no more records, I don't have time to do the band thing, and I'm done. And I've been that way for a long time. So about maybe 2 months ago, I kind of threw it at him like, hey, what do you think about doing this electronic music project? And I think he was like a deer in the headlights, I told him, between the two of us, we have so much gear that we could do this. And so when was it? Like about a month ago, I brought my entire rig with me. Like, I have vintage keyboards, vintage synthesizers, drum machines, and I brought my whole rig to the studio, and we plugged in, and we just started jamming, electronic music. And it was magical. It was really amazing what we could do. But it's interesting because him and I come from the rock and roll background with recording guitar, bass, drums. We've never done electronic, which is completely different than what we do. So it was kind of a learning curve for us, and especially for him, since he records, and how we're going to do this, because nothing is like most electronic artists, everything is built in their computer, like their drum machines, and they have their plugins of all their keyboards and shit like that. Well, we don't use any of that. We have real keyboards, real machines that we actually use physically. And how do you get that in? How do you record that and get everything, the tempo synced up? And my biggest influences are the Chemical Brothers, and they have like $500,000 or $500 million on stage, and they can do that live, which is basically, in a nutshell, like taking a recording studio and putting it on stage, kind of. And I always wondered, like, the Chemical Brothers, there's two guys, and actually there's a third guy, but you never see him. But what were their responsibilities on stage? Like, what do they both do? You see them back there, but what are they doing? And so I found this long article of this third guy that he's basically the kind of like the brains behind the Chemical Brothers. So he's backstage syncing all the time codes for their music as it's done live. and this guy's like a mastermind, like an Einstein, but you can't see him. So he's doing all the time clocks and some of the mixing. But one of the Chemical Brothers, one guy, all he does is he has a big mixing board, and he mixes the sounds and mutes and mixes just on the his job is basically on the mixing board, and then the other guy is back playing sequencers, playing keyboards, queuing up samples, and executing them. And if you ever seen the Chemical Brothers, they never play the same thing twice at a show. It's always going to be something different. So I was always curious how they did all that. And it's just crazy. And so on a smaller scale, we with the gear that we have, we actually finished a song, and we got through it, and we found out, like, okay, we know we can do this, and it's going to have to be like these two different ways of recording it. And there's a lot of editing.
Oh man.
A lot of taking the mouse and going over the wave and deleting it, and then cutting things in and cutting things out, so things start to do like this, start to build and dynamics. And so we kind of know what our responsibilities are, and we kind of know what to do in a way. There's so much more to learn, like MIDI's like a whole other world. And that's the thing with the Chemical Brothers. Their whole show is basically MIDI in, MIDI out, through MIDI, in, out, through, in, out, throughout. It's just, it's endless. And when you can figure out MIDI and crack the code of MIDI, it just opens up a whole other world of what you can do. And it's just insane. Like we've just like hit the tip of the iceberg. So
Yeah.
that's what's happening.
Well, that's really cool.
Yeah, man.
Did you how did this sort of when I think of electronic music, I sort of think back to like what was that, A New Order, and that's pretty much, I'm trying to think of maybe the Pet Shop Boys. Really limited.
Those would be more bands. This is like
is this like a DJ thing, or
we're not DJs. Basically, we're producing music that DJs would play.
Oh, okay. So is this like a house music, or what would you call it?
I would call it something a cross between a band called Sea Feel, that's electronic, kind of like maybe Groove Armada, Chemical Brothers. Usually electronic producers, there's just usually one or two guys, and they just sit behind a computer in a recording studio and a mixing board all day, and just program beats. And they usually have a gigantic array of keyboards and synthesizers at hand, and drum machines. It's quite a whole other world. It's really cool to break out of the rock thing and dive into something completely new. And it's something I've been into, electronic music, probably for maybe 25 years. And I'm a big fan of jungle jazz and Mark Farina, Ronnie Size, Sea Feel again. There's quite a few producers that I really like a lot. Saint Germain is another one. They're just phenomenal electronic producers.
Wow. What did you think of that record that that Billy Idol put out his Vital Idol record maybe it was a couple years ago or so, but it was all remixes by these various, I guess you could say, electronic type producers and stuff like that. What do you
No,
think of that?
I haven't heard it. No.
I mean, I listened to part of it and I thought it was sort of interesting. I was a big fan of his first Vital Idol, remix compilation where they used, a lot of different electronic stuff and sort of, switched around verses and did all this other stuff with it. But I guess I could say I'm not really, I was never really into that whole scene, so I'm not really knowledgeable, but it sounds really cool. A different so well, that's really cool.
I've never been one to actually go out, and because to tell you the truth, like going out and see someone spin records is kind of boring unless it's the Chemical Brothers where they use amazing crazy light scenes and stuff. But I've always been more of a listener than someone goes out and watches some guy spin records. It's just not my thing, really.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of really, I guess you could say it's sort of I don't know. I guess it's, there was a whole period where you had like a lot of, I guess you could say maybe going back to Rodney's, in Los Angeles, and then going through the whole rock thing. And then it's sort of like the electronic thing took over the clubs, and you don't really have, at least to my knowledge, I don't know of a whole lot of places where they're playing like, rock music, like, the club type thing. Like,
what were you saying? Like where bands play?
Not like bands play, like, you'd go to the club, like they used to have, I think in Los Angeles, they had Peanuts.
Oh yeah.
And they'd have a different club in there every night. And there'd be some nights there'd be like at English Acid, where they'd have a lot of nights it was records and stuff like that, but then they'd have bands and stuff like that there too. So.
Oh, I know it still goes on. You just have to be plugged into that whole scene, really. When I was my last 3 or 4 years in LA, I was going to a lot of those kind of like after hours parties and DJs and all that stuff. And when you're plugged in to that whole scene, you kind of get to know like different venues. You have a different night, And so there was one bar that I used to go to a lot, was called Footsie's, and they would play 60s garage, and it was awesome, like 60s garage and psych. And then another night you go there and it's something maybe like it's Britpop night or whatever. So you just kind of have to get plugged in. I know there's no, like we talked earlier, there's no BAM or Mean Street anymore to pick up, or Weekly.
Yeah, it's all online now.
So now you got to really dig for something that you're not familiar with, So there you go.
How's your show going?
Show's going really, really well. I'm taking some time off. I'll be back on January 2nd, and I've been off for about a week and a half. And I could tell you right now, about 45 minutes ago, I'm like fiending to get back on to do my show. I'm like, maybe I took too long off because I want to get behind the mic again really bad. Like it's calling me or something, but I miss doing my shows already. Since the last I spoke to you, I got on a radio station called Liskeard Radio in England, Mad Wasp Radio, which I do an exclusive show for Mad Wasp. And then I got a show on a radio station on your side of town in Brooklyn called The Face.
Oh, wow.
And I do an exclusive show for them on Mondays. So right now I'm on 11 radio stations worldwide right now.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Are you guys, did you think it, I think you're picking up feedback on your speakers.
How's that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
better?
better. Yeah. Anyhow, I was just gonna say, is there any, do you think there's a chance you and Dave might do press play again?
Maybe once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just been so busy with doing this. I was doing a jazz show. I don't know if I told you about that. And
No.
I was doing a jazz show, and I lasted about maybe 4 months. It was just too much.
Yeah.
And so I had to quit doing the jazz show and just focus on my motorbike.
Yeah.
It was just too much overkill.
Yeah. No, I hear you. But it was cool, that show that you and him had. You guys were good together.
Yeah, it was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. We'll probably do another one soon. Just
Yeah, you guys should do like some, like maybe maybe 2 or 3 times a year or something like that. Maybe, in special things. Because
Yeah.
you guys were really good together. You had a good rapport and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of interesting stuff, and it's the banter between, going back and forth about the music. There's a lot of stuff. A couple of the shows I saw that I hadn't really, I guess I knew, but I hadn't really paid attention to in a while, where there's so much being thrown at you all the time, and you may have heard something, or you hear one song or something like that, and then if it's sort of like brought to your attention, then you sort of, I think it was like the show you guys did on I don't know if it was the psychedelic thing or
oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of it, right? I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it was pretty cool. So
yeah,
I did learn something.
Yeah, well, that was in our infancy, because when we started doing press play, all our shows were themed, and we were starting to run out of ideas. And so once in a while I'd say, let's just play music. So we would do that. And so it evolved into just playing music, and once in a while we would do a theme show. But we kind of, like I said, after, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, we kind of just ran out of ideas of what are we going to do for the next show, and
well, you don't always have to have a plan, there's sometimes you can do a free form thing too, and just sort of, organically let it sort of happen, or put together a playlist, or, because I think that is, that was like, if you listen to any of the great shows like Rodney's shows, or some of the independent college stations, you'd have people coming in there and they were just spinning stuff that they liked, I mean, one of the great things I think that, in terms of Rodney, was that he'd be playing Sonny and Cher, and then he'd be playing, Bush or the Go-Go's, or, the Runaways, the Sex Pistols, all these different bands. So, it was just what was cool.
Yeah.
And so I think that, you sometimes the planned shows are cool, when you have a theme, and,
God bless Rodney, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah, he's great.
Oh man, he's so awesome.
Yeah, I used to call him like pretty much. This is like in the 80s, like every other week or something. And he'd always, you could get to him on
Yeah.
the phone. And that was really cool. And ask him all the questions about what was going on. And of course he knew everything. But it wasn't like a really, it wasn't a long thing, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, whatever, bye. You know what I mean? He would answer your question, or he'd say, oh, the songs, because I got to get back on or whatever. But
Yeah.
it was really cool. And I used to go to all those, the record, what do you call, record conventions that they used to have over there in Buena Park and stuff, and look for stuff. And so it was pretty cool. So what else is happening? What's happening on your show with all your mini, what is it? Dream pop, and what else do you have? And
the latest
shoegaze and
yeah, shoegaze, dream pop, indie pop, garage, and psych. So I'm always trying to think of ways to keep the show not so stale, and it's a pretty well branded show. It's pretty tight. So I had over the next year is going to be it's going to be the same, just a little bit different. So on how I do my live show, I have a green screen and I have background stuff going on, right?
yeah.
So what I'm doing is I'm premiering artists, painters, photographers, and it's awesome, man. Like there's this famous artist in England, her name is Gen Z, and her paintings are just like amazing. And I said, hey, I'd like to premiere your art and use your artwork as my background during my show. So she sends me, 15 or 20 photographs of her painting. And so I had them on the back, like in a slideshow thing. And then before her, I had this lady by the name of Jane McCumsty from Australia. Same thing. She paints these crazy, like abstract paintings, very colorful, just completely abstract stuff. And so I was premiering her. So then I have another person from Russia who's going to put her photographs as my background. So that's one thing. I'm going to start premiering artists. The other thing is I'm going to start getting people to curate my show. So I'm going to have, let's say, for example, like, hey, Eddie, be a guest DJ. Send me 25 songs. I'll mic my phone. We could have a conversation, but the entire show is all the songs you picked.
Oh, wow.
I want to do that. And then the other one is I'm getting a lot of attention from record labels and promotion companies and management companies. And they're sending me stacks of CDs and vinyl records and T-shirts and all sorts of swag. And I've been thinking about it, and I came up with this idea of advertising for record labels and seeing if record labels would be interested in doing a commercial, and I would play it, for a certain very, very low amount of money to, a commercial to promote their record label.
Isn't that payola though?
No, it's an advertisement.
Yeah, but that's what they got busted for, though, Charles. Remember?
A payola is a band paying you to play their music.
No, that was with the record labels. That was the huge thing. What was that? Probably in the 80s or 70s, something like that.
That was Dick Clark. He got nailed for the payola because bands and labels were paying him money to play a certain song.
Yeah.
That was the payola scam.
Oh, okay.
This is not a payola scam. This is a commercial promoting their bands that are on their roster.
Mm.
That's basically it.
Well, that's cool.
If I was saying, hey, if you want your band, if you want me to play your band, at every show, give me,
So you want to just have like commercials on your show?
Yeah, advertising.
For albums and stuff like that.
Yeah, I like to get record labels, online record stores, commercials that reflect on the culture of my show. In other words, I don't want to have some Amazon or Zest soap commercial. A commercial where the listener.
That's what made your show so interesting, with those vintage commercials that you played.
Yeah, I actually play those on my motorbike show now.
That's really cool, the way you had that like sort of history, because it sort of reflects, where things were, you know what I mean, during that time. And one of the things that that you really have to understand, I think a lot of times when you're like listening to a record, now they'll say, oh, well, this is a rock record, or this is, shoegaze record, or whatever band it is, John or whatever. But they don't understand. What people don't understand now, I think, is they don't understand, how that album sort of shaped what was going on around in the world, at that time, that those albums and that, particular type of music sort of, those things, all the elements that kind of came together, you know what I mean? It's not like just something on Spotify that you listen to or you buy a CD or a vinyl record and you think, oh, I'm just playing this, but understanding what was going on around it. And I think that, that was what was so great about, the way you guys, and the way you integrated those commercials and those things and the whole culture from that time period. Because I think that, when you understand that, you understand that it's not just like, rock and roll, at least like to me, wasn't just like a genre. It was like a whole sort of idea in culture. You know what I mean? It was sort of like, I guess you could say, well, it was like freedom, it was like being part of, that whole, and I've mentioned this before, but like like being part of some secret society, you know what I mean? You have music that only you knew or whatever. And, of course, then there was a thing about, which band sold out and who did this and all that, those type of ridiculous things. But I just think that all those elements, sort of, that's the interesting thing when people want to talk about a record or what was happening, what made that record possible. You know what I mean? Because people were at a certain moment in their lives. The musicians were at a certain place and a certain place and time. And I think maybe it's because there's so many things thrown at people now, and it's so decentralized, and, you don't really have you don't have that filter or that idea of like, oh, well, I'm talking to you and we're talking about, all these different things you have going on now and stuff. But if I was to go back to the if we talked about the 90s, like I mentioned, English acid, right? And you knew about that and what was going on with that and exactly what I was talking about. Whereas now it's sort of funny because you don't have, there's not that sort of camaraderie around music. You know what I mean? Like people of a certain age group, like, oh yeah, I know about that. Or even like, for instance, like the Beatles, like we weren't even thought of, we were just being probably with the Beatles, right? If even then, right? But my parents, played like KRLA in LA, they'd play that. And my dad would sing the songs. And what I find really interesting is, everybody, I have so many friends that talk about it, and I love streaming. I love the streaming platforms and being able to like, oh, I can listen to this album right now, right? It's a great thing. But I find it interesting that, there's so many people, in spite of having access to so much music, that just don't know anything about it. You know what I mean? Or even the stuff where like now, like I always loved the British glitter music, right? Which was like Gary Glitter and Susie Quattro, because I found out about it by, listening to Dave somewhat, but also reading magazines, and listening to Rodney's and, and hearing stories about his glitter club, right? Mm-hmm. And so I was able to find out, even though there was no way I could have experienced that, anything to do with that. But I was able to find out about it and go and look for these artists, and I had to go look for these artists. Yeah. And it cracks me up that now, there's all this stuff and, and a lot of people, and especially music fans and, or people today who listen to music, it's not as, there's not even like the curiosity. And I think that is, that whole aspect, like you're talking about doing in your show, like having the commercials that were playing during that time, and stuff like that, you could really sort of turn that whole thing around with your idea, you know what I mean? With that idea of like playing commercials, showing different things. Or I noticed one of your shows, well, I don't know all of them, but a lot of times you'll put like a concert up or something really cool from MTV. Yeah. And that's really cool. I forget which show. I just have too much going on now.
Might have been my motorbike show, because I do play music videos as well.
Yeah. So I mean, but you get what I'm saying. I mean, what am I saying is making, I don't know if it's making sense, but
Yeah, I totally get you. When you were just talking about all this, I always say, nothing is sacred anymore. And the other thing you mentioned about, going and looking for that record, there was one record, it took me probably 10 years to find, but what I used to do is my best friend, who's no longer with us, him and I used to spend a whole day going record shopping all over LA. And we would hit up maybe 4 to 6 record stores. And one thing I did was I used to have a list, a piece of paper, and a list of bands that I want to get. And I'd keep that, and I would just, as I would go through my little walk of life at work or talking with friends, I would go, oh, what's the name of that band? Who sings this song? Oh, I would write it down, put it in my wallet. Then when I would go to the record stores in LA, I would break out that little list and start looking for them. And that's kind of how I did it. And you can see it, all those, that's my entire CD collection.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So what I used to do is I would go through a lot of my CDs and go, okay, what are the ones I don't want anymore? So, back in the day, they used to buy and sell used CDs.
Yeah, I remember I did that.
That's what I did. I'd have a stack of CDs, and I'd bring them, and they give me store credit, and I would go and get what I want, and then do the transaction, and it was just like, it was great. It was an amazing time back then.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like, when I'm talking about this, I don't want to sound like, I'm cynical and, a cynical middle-aged man or negative. But what I'm just saying is I really think it's important, like what like your show you talk about, with those ads from, like the old ads.
Yeah.
And doing all that stuff, I think it's really cool. And I think it's really important because I think that you have to consider, I mean, to me, but maybe it's just me, I have an interest about, how did that come what were they thinking when they were doing this record, or, where was it recorded? I'm not as interested necessarily in technical details. I mean, I am in some lights, in some ways, in terms of the guitars I play or I've wanted or things I've read about. But I think it's really interesting to hear and to know things about what the artist was doing or what they were exposed to, that helped them sort of create the music that they did. And I think it's important too to understand, like for instance, the music, like I was talking about the glitter stuff and I sort of got sidetracked, but I noticed now they call it glam rock. And maybe you can help me understand, maybe I'm wrong about this, but now I see it always called glam rock. But to me, that was not glitter rock. I remember the British thing, like Gary Glitter, Suzi Quatro, Alice Cooper, and all those people were glitter rock. And I thought that the 80s hair sort of metal, like Poison and all those people, I thought that was glam rock. But now I see it's sort of like all being called glam rock. And I'm like, I didn't think that was called glam rock. I thought glam rock was metal. And I think it's sort of like, with like the 1,000 genres or like subgenres of music, it's sort of like, but that's how I remember people calling it the British glitter music. And, and then all of a sudden I see that when I'm on Spotify too, I see it, they have a picture of Bowie, right? And then it's always Bowie, and Bowie's great, but there were a lot of other people too, but they always have him with the, either the Aladdin Sane or something. And it's glam rock. And I'm like, it's not, to me, that's not, glam rock. That's glitter rock.
I would go more towards glitter rock with Bowie. Glam rock is more like Cinderella, White Snake.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And that's what I thought up until like looking in, when you go online, and now it's all called, or if I even typed in on Google, I typed in glitter rock and it came up a big thing and it said on the side, Wikipedia, glam rock. And I'm like, that's not glam rock.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, okay, well, when you see these playlists, they have these great playlists, which are like, 1975 or 1977. And it's so funny to me, like, I think it was 1977, the one I was listening to, but they had like Lust for Life and they had The Passenger and they had all these songs in there. And I thought, wow, it's sort of interesting because it's like, Lust for Life was really, at least to my knowledge, was Left for Dead by RCA. And it wasn't really even in the consciousness of like music people, because I know I had to go out and look for that record. This was prior to Train Spotting, where they used Lust for Life and The Thing and all that stuff. And I think I probably spent about $200 for that album on vinyl, because I couldn't find it anywhere, and that was like all the records, like all the Runaways records. I found you could only find the best of the Runaways, right? That was it after Joan Jett became famous. And so I'd have to go to record conventions and all these places, or even, fortunately you could always get like Generation X, you could find all their albums. The Sex Pistols, but a lot of the records that they now present as, oh, this was, like it was always there and it was always just like part of that year and everything like that. Well, most people weren't listening to that back in that. But now it's like, because now it's different, it's sort of like changed, and I understand they added, that's the year the album came out and all that stuff like that. And I understand the problem sort of within that whole of, aligning things up and everything. But I think it's an interesting idea to understand where this album was way back when and how people view it now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like it's a completely different thing. And sometimes, it's almost like like you're being gaslit or something. Did I really go around and do pay all this money and all this time? And so maybe it is a bit of envy on my part that people can now just press a button and but at least I had the adventure of going around and, looking for that album.
I think that's the best. You have so much more appreciation for it when you find it. It's just I've said this so many times, like nothing is sacred in the sense you just press a button and it's at your doorstep. But like you and I, when you go to a record convention and you're trying to find that one record and you can't find it, and then 5 years later you find it, and it's like, it's so cool. It's like you just discovered gold, or you just found gold. And one record that I couldn't find for many, many, many years, I ended up finding it in England.
Oh, wow. Which one was that?
It's a band called The Wonder Stuff. And I was like a fanatic, crazed lunatic about this band. And I have everything, all their singles, all their records on vinyl and CD. And I needed one single on vinyl to complete my collection. And it was nowhere to be found. And then here I am in 1996. I'm at a little record convention in the basement, some basement in Camden Town, dark and dingy, and I'm going through we're just rummaging through, and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, like I finally found it. I was like, you have no idea how excited I was. It was like the best.
Yeah, no, that was always a great feeling of finding something. Fortunately, I had so many people that did you ever remember Middle Earth Records in Downey?
No, I don't remember that.
That was a great record store. I don't know if it's still there. I think it was Middle Earth, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Middle Earth Records. But I used to go there, and they had great section. They had the picture disc and all that stuff like that. And, it was really, though, an adventure, just talking to people. And I finally found this guy I met at the Buena Park I don't know if it was a convention center. I don't think it was a convention center, but it was some big place. Some auditorium or something, but they had the record convention there. And I met this guy named Steve, and he he had all the stuff. He had and it was, of course, it was for sale, but he would sell, the bootlegs, the bootleg live stuff. And, he had bootleg videotapes, VHS cassettes and stuff like that. And, but he sort of became my go-to person.
Yeah.
It was probably because I was just this kid and had cash. It's but maybe it wasn't, I don't know, but it was cool. And he actually, I still think I have it. He would give me interviews from people. I still have he gave me a cassette of Joan Jett doing an interview with the head of their fan club in England when she was recording I Love Rock and Roll with the Sex Pistols and all that, when she went over there. And she did and it wasn't it was just impromptu interview with this guy who ran their fan club over there, which was pretty cool.
Wow.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
And some other, Generation X stuff, and he had it all. So that was, my big thing. But I know we were going to talk about live albums. Yeah. I know that you weren't a huge live person, album buying guy.
Yeah. You got, since we talked about that, you got me thinking the last couple of days. And one of the first records I ever, my mom probably bought it. but it was a live album. It was an Elton John record on vinyl. In fact, I still have it. And I used to listen to that a lot. I think I was probably, gosh, maybe 6 or 7 years old when I got that. And what else do I have? That a couple of live records I have that I like. You ever heard of Spiritualized?
No.
You might dig them. They're kind of like shoegaze, psychedelic, just crazy, just amazing. But I have one of their live albums, and the other ones I like a lot is the show A Concert for George. Did you ever see that? No, it was for George Harrison, and that's an amazing record. Live record, it's insane. It's like everyone and their brother is on stage. And the other one I like is the live Bob Dylan record with the band backing him up. And the other one is actually, there's a live album, I forget the name of it, it's on the tip of my tongue, but it's actually the band. And another amazing live album. But the Dylan one with the band backing them up is probably one of my favorites. Concert for George and the band. I think those are. And then I'm thinking of like live. I think they went to record, but one live album I really liked a lot was REM Unplugged when they were on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like those unplugged things.
And then they put them out as records. So I bought the live Unplugged record with.
Are you talking about, was the Bob Dylan record The Flood? Before the Flood?
Yeah. That's the one. And let me see, what was the other one?
And then there was I'm sorry.
The band live albums. Let's see. I wish I remember the name of it. It was when you type in the band, it's funny what you get. Oh boy. Where is it?
The Elton John live album, was that 19, was that the, what is it, 17/11/70?
I don't know. It's just a picture of him with the piano, and I think it's just like some grayish background color.
Huh.
That's all I can remember.
Oh, okay. Like this?
Let's see. No, not that one.
Yeah. Oh well, maybe I'll try and figure it out. One of the great mysteries. I've been listening. The reason I wanted to talk with you about it is because sort of lately I've been getting into live albums, and I got to see the Ramones like 3 times during the 90s, right?
Wow, you got to see them live?
Yeah, I saw them in 91, and then I saw them twice for their Adios Amigos thing.
Wow.
So, but I was looking online, I was on Spotify, and they have this great album. You know, they had, what is it? It's Alive or whatever. which I really didn't care for that record, but they have one from 1996, which is from their Adios Amigos tour, and it's called Greatest Hits Live. And you should really check that out, because you know what the funny thing was? I went to the Hollywood Palladium, and I took my younger sister with me, right? Because she was, you know, she grew up sort of like with the whole Skid Row, and she was into Tiffany, and she was into, like, you know, that was her generation thing, right? So I was like, oh, I'm going to take you to a real show and everything like that. And the Ramones, the only thing I remember about the show is all I heard the whole time was like 1, 2, 3, 4. And that was it. The whole thing was so fast. It was like by the time that the end, their tour, they had perfected their art so completely that, I mean, you couldn't even, like, before you, it was like so fast, Charles. It was over before, but it was just like blam, blam. And if you listen to that record, you really can sort of appreciate how they sort of, I mean, to be that tight and that fast, it was really like, I mean, it's an amazing record.
So there was no downtime in between songs, you're saying?
No, it was just like, all you heard was 1, 2, 3, 4. That's all I remember hearing. She kept, I remember, the reason I remember it so well is because it was very loud, it was very crowded, and she kept saying, you know, what song are they playing? And I was like, because I couldn't even tell. It was just so fast. And it was like, you know, it was an amazing, amazing show. Even though I couldn't tell, you know, it just happened, you know, but it was so fast. But when you listen to that record, it really sort of like, I was going, okay, now I can hear it because I'm in a different environment. I'm just listening to an album. But when you listen even to the record, it is so unbelievably fast. And all you hear too is 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it was CJ Ramone doing it, but it's really, really a great, great live album, and such a testament to, you know, when they did call it quits, they were perfect. They were perfect. And I think that Joey Ramone's voice was so, it was great. He had really just, I mean, everybody was at the top of their game, and it was just bam, 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 you know?
Yeah.
It's awesome. So I love that record. And I've had that record on rotation for like the last few weeks. And then I was listening. Oh, and here's this. Do you remember how, like, if you were into punk, you couldn't say you liked metal, and, like, you know, you were into this, you know, and it was very like, oh, don't get caught with like a Twisted Sister thing, you know, or something like that. You know, I even had to ask Dave one time. I said, am I remembering that correctly? And he was like, yeah, you're right, you know, about that. You know, because things like, you know, I think it was even Steve Jones from the Sex, you know, he was saying from the Sex Pistols was saying, oh, you know, I always liked Journey, but I could never say I liked Journey. Like that. It was very funny, but okay. Oh yeah. Scorpions, Worldwide Live, man. Killer record. And I loved the Scorpions because I loved their Rudolf Schenker was the only guitarist out there that I could see that was like rhythm guitar. And since I play rhythm guitar, you know, it's not like something, you know, especially in the 80s, everybody wanted to be Yngwie.
Yeah.
So I really, and also too, the way he played, you know, Rudolf Schenker, the way he just like, he has such passion. It's like a ferocious, it's like what rock and roll should be. And that record, a whole band, it's like amazing. That's a great, great album. And I shouldn't use that word amazing. Someone used that a lot who I just like after a while. But these are great, great records. Anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to go off on my little tangent, but
no, it's all good, man.
Elton John. And so you got to figure out what that record is so we can put it in the liner notes, not the liner notes, but the notes in the description.
If I could.
And yeah, I never heard the Bob Dylan with the band. I never heard of that album, so I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I think it's a double vinyl. I have it on CD, or I should have it on CD.
How about Cheap Trick at Budokan?
Oh yeah, you were saying that like the famous
Live album.
yeah. Yeah.
You don't remember that on 93 KHJ?
I remember that song being played all over the place.
Remember, it was so great. The reason that's so awesome is because I love the way Robin Zander, the way he did the whole, you'd hear the audience on, when they put the record on, you hear, I want you to want me.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there's just something that, when you hear the studio recording is good, but it's nothing compared to that live album.
Right.
So you don't hear as much. What was I going to ask you too? What do you think about these, all these like archive, like there's so many, these bands putting out like archive concert recordings, like where there's 1 million concerts and they'll have a date, you know what I mean? Like, oh, here was this date and all that stuff.
I don't quite follow you on what, like on YouTube you talking about?
No, I'm talking about like on Spotify and other streaming platforms. Like they'll have like almost like an archive of their shows.
Oh, honestly, I I don't use Spotify. It's
What do you use? Well, it's on YouTube too.
I listen to a lot of YouTube. Personally, Spotify for me isn't very user friendly, and I'm not one that creates playlists and all that stuff. But I use YouTube as my main place to listen to music.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's where I usually gravitate to, because it's for some reason, like Spotify and I, we just don't get along. Like when I just start searching for something simple, it doesn't come up, and I have to do one too many clicks to get there. And I can just like put in, the band albums, and they're all right there. I can just see which one. In fact, that's how I should probably find it. But bands archiving their...
No, you know what I mean? Like they have like their, they'll put out all their shows on as, like albums, I guess you could say, but it's like, it's a whole like archive of their live shows.
I don't know. I don't have really, I guess, much of an opinion. I haven't really seen.
I was just curious, because I know the Pixies did that. They put out like a lot of their shows, which is pretty cool. I just think that, I was just wondering, especially with a live record, you really want to get like like I was saying, like that Ramones, even though the Ramones did a couple of live albums, I always think that, you sort of want to, everybody can do what they want to do, but I just think that when you have that whole glut of something, it's sort of like, it sort of takes away from, if you have some, 1 or 2 live albums that I think it's really cool. But anyway, most people could see the whole show anyway now, right? On YouTube. But
speaking of live shows, like recorded, did you know the Rolling Stones had a mobile recording truck?
Who, the Rolling Stones?
Yeah.
I know a lot of their stuff was recorded. Yeah. I didn't know they had a mobile thing that went around and recorded every show with them or something like that.
Yeah. There's a band called 10 Years After, They're from the 70s, and there's a record that 10 Years After put out because they opened for the Rolling Stones. And if you look in the inserts, I think there's a picture, even a picture of the van, that's this truck that they used, and the pictures of inside, like all the reel-to-reel tapes that they used to record and how they did it and everything. But there was a mobile recording unit. Here's 10 Years After. Let's see. One of the records by 10 Years After used the Rolling Stones, what do you call it? Mobile recording truck. And it's a live. Oh, here it is. Yeah, here's a picture of it. If you do 10 years after, probably live, the front cover is a picture of the recording unit.
10 years after?
Yeah.
Live?
Yeah, 10 years after, recorded live. And you'll see these reel-to-reels. And
a lot of clubs and stuff always recorded all the shows.
Yeah.
That's why you see all these bootlegs and stuff out now.
Here's the link.
Oh yeah, I see it. It. It's pretty cool.
I know, right?
It's way cool. So with your thing you're doing with your electronic project,
yeah.
How did you write songs with your other bands and stuff?
I just play drums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you writing songs now with the electronic thing?
Yeah.
And how is that?
It's cool because there's no verse chorus. It's all about the vibe, the dropping in and out of beats, the dropping in and out of.
Well, what would you call that? What you're doing then? What type of music would it be?
The genre? I just call it electronic music, but the genre, I don't really know yet. I mean, the first song I did, the first two, are just basically house beats.
Oh, okay.
With, the drum machine, just a basic house beat that drops in and out, but it has these psychedelic, groovy textures of my synthesizer and some other instruments that I have, other keyboards, and so I just kind of I know how to play piano and I know chords, and I've always known how to do that, so I know a bit about chords and structure and stuff like that. And so I don't know, I'm just a natural, I'll have my drum machine going, and then I'll just kind of bang out something on my synthesizer. And then my synthesizer is it's a Juno 6. It's the most sought after synth that's out, one of them. And it has all the levers right there. So all the filters, all the oscillators, all the envelopes, arpeggiators, they're all right there. So I can easily just kind of slowly move things in and out and create these really wild and cool effects on my songs. And then once when we do that, we have 16 tracks. And then Brian and I go and we start chopping things up,
Wow.
So we lay down the drum machine, and because a drum machine, there's only one output, right? So you might have, say, there's 16 sounds in a drum machine, that you press the buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's only one output. So we couldn't very well mix a drum machine sounds, because if you did, you're mixing them all. It's like basically using one microphone on a drum set, because now you can't control the sound of a snare or bass drum independently. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Yeah. So on a drum machine, there isn't, 16 outputs, like one output for a snare drum, a bass drum, your hi-hats. So what we did was we took the drum machine, pressed the play button, and recorded just the snare on one track all the way across.
Oh, wow.
And then we took the bass drum, did the same thing. And then we took the congas, the high and low, did that. Pretty soon we had about 7 drum tracks off the drum machine. So then from there, I would come up with a phrase. So I would play that phrase over and over again for like 8 minutes. And then I would do another phrase, then a lead, and record all those. And then everything is just like, then after that, we chop it all up. We start arranging it right on the computer.
Well, that's pretty cool. How do you feel like your experience, being a drummer and someone who comes from, rock and roll, how do you think that affects all that other experience affects your, your current, like how your approach to electronic music?
Oh, because it's endless. There's like, I have like I could record like 3 or 4 records right now in my head of electronic music, because it's just like.
Right, but I mean, like, if you're already into electronic music, right, and you're doing electronic music, then that's sort of your thing, right?
Yeah.
Whereas you come from rock and roll and playing rock and roll music. So what I guess more what I'm looking to hear from you more is what do you think how do you think that your approach, how that affects your approach to what you're doing now? And do I assume it would be somewhat different than what someone who's already working in, electronic music, when you're in your comfort zone, you're doing your thing, right? Now you're doing something that you don't know, really, in a way. Being something different to it. So I just was curious, what do you think that you're bringing to that from rock and roll?
That's a great question. What we're going to do is we're not going to use every song isn't going to be some 4 on the floor bass drum. We're going to use like live drums. We're going to use to do this. We'll use funk beats. We'll use jazz beats, soul, all sorts of different types of genres, and putting it to electronic music. So kind of like Kraftwerk. That's kind of like another idea that I want to go to is very Kraftwerk sounding, where it's not that techno beat all the time. Doonch, 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 doonch. That's just like one beat. But I want to expand into playing like tomorrow we're going to get together, and I want to see if we could come up with an electronic piece, but put live drums behind it. So it sounds like a live drummer with maybe just playing the kick, snare, and the hi-hat, and using more of a rock beat on top of electronic music, which if you listen to like the Chemical Brothers, there's quite a few songs where they're using rock beats all the time.
No, that's pretty cool.
So yeah, and then like I'm a big fan of jungle jazz, and if you listen to jungle jazz, that's electronic music, but it's amazing like how it's done. It's like awesome. And then if you go into like electronic soul music, it's just like it's just amazing what's coming out, especially right now. That radio station I told you I'm on the Face radio. If you go to the Face radio like right now, you're going to hear some crazy, amazing funk and soul, maybe remixes from the 60s and 70s. You might hear one guy might be playing just electronic funk and soul that maybe has come out in the last 20 years. It's really cool. It's kind of like someone that just got into jazz and just discovered like all these amazing jazz artists that didn't know that existed. You know, it's kind of like a whole other. It's like going to the record store, and you know the jazz section is in the back in its own room, and then you got electronic, which is like in its own room, and then rock has its own big room. And I think it's just something. It's kind of like an acquired taste, but I think electronic music, I think you would find something you would like if you looked around and listened out there and seeing what's out there. You'll find something in electronic music that you'll really dig. Like if you're into acid jazz, there's some amazing acid jazz stuff that's out. But I think everyone, if they spent some time, they would find something that they really, really like as far as electronic music goes, and as far as electronic music producers. You'll find something.
That's really cool. Well, it's sort of like you have one of the interesting things is that you have, you know, this curiosity to sort of explore, you know. A lot of people, you know, they, how can I put it? You know, not everybody can do that. And not everybody can do that effectively either, you know? I mean, so that's really cool.
Yeah, I tried doing this on my own in 2016 and 2017, and I just kept hitting a brick wall every time because I wasn't skilled in mixing down. I wasn't skilled at adding effects. I wasn't skilled in that whole area. So when I would be done with a piece, it was just dry. I try to like add effects to it, but I didn't know what the hell I was doing. You know, it's like reverb, and it has all these megahertz and kilohertz and what this is going to do when you run it at this gauge or at this level. And that's where Brian comes in, where he went to recording school for this. So he knows exactly what it's going to sound like before he even presses a button or turns a knob, you know? And so having him is gold, you know? And he can play as well. He can play bass, keyboards, guitar. That's another thing was we want to incorporate electric guitars. We want to incorporate everything. You know,
Wow.
That's cool.
It'll be interesting to hear it.
I am too.
To hear that. Although I will say, I do remember, I don't know if you remember this maybe it was probably like the late 80s when I think Susie and the Banshees and they did that record, what was it?
Peekaboo?
Yeah, or something like that. And there were some other bands that did some stuff and sort of utilized, you know, keyboards, I think, and drum machines and stuff like that. But at the time, I remember them being really sort of like sort of, I guess in a way, sort of like criticized for it. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like what people, what people wanted to hear from them or whatever. So,
Yeah.
but I still think that's a really great record that they did. And I really did like, I mean, they really did sort of structure it, in what they did great. And, I think that is when when you have something that's sort of like a known commodity, and you can bring different aspect into what you're doing without alienating, you know what I mean? People,
Yeah.
What people expect or whatever. But of course, that's something that people did expect different things from them, and they've always done that. And that was what was so great about them. But I do remember at the time that was like a big thing of, don't use a drum machine on your record. Or maybe that's something I just like, that was just my impression. I don't know. It's like the whole thing of the, oh, you can't listen to this record if you like this genre, so don't listen to that. That was more like a school thing. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
You would you'd have to wear your colors, like, are you new wave? Are you a new romantic?
yeah, new, or didn't they call it like Neuro at one time, or some of the Neuros? And
Neuro, or you were a rude boy?
well, I don't know what the Rude Boys were, but I knew what I just knew the metal, or the stoners, I guess.
Rude boys were the ska guys, the ska kids.
Yeah, but that was probably that was down in Orange County, I think, right?
It was done in England.
Oh, I know, but I'm talking about mostly California. That's my whole thing. But I do remember like ska stuff being and hearing about that in Orange County or something like that. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong about that.
Yes. For some strange reason, ska bands became really popular in Orange County. But ska's been going on since the 60s.
Yeah. Well, I know that, but I just remember in terms of like being a teen, like, at the time, I remember, I mean, I think No Doubt came out of that supposedly ska scene in Orange County, right?
Yeah, I used to, in fact, just down the street here was where No Doubt went to high school.
Uh-huh.
And in 1986 and 87, I used to go see No Doubt play at the high school. And they were a traditional, straight up ska band with the horn section and everything.
Wow.
And they were absolutely amazing.
Wow.
Amazing. And then they, forget what label they were on, some little shit label. And then
So they were on Interscope, didn't they?
That's the one, yeah. And then there was nothing ska about that. And we were like, what the hell? What the hell is this crap? And then they crossed over mainstream and beat that one song to death for 5 years. And I was like, this is crap, like, this is horrible.
Yeah, but a lot of people really dug it.
Yeah, I mean, it's bubblegum pop. I'm not into bubblegum, that kind of bubblegum pop. But when they were a ska band, in fact, I have their demo tape somewhere around here on cassette of when they were a ska band.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, they were like crazy amazing. Like,
wow.
Outstanding to check.
Yeah, I never heard of. I hadn't heard of them. I didn't hear of them till that first record that blew open. Blew them. What was it? The Tragic Kingdom.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that's when I first heard. I know they had a record previous to that, I guess, but I didn't hear too much about that. I mean, the only band I really knew from Orange County was Social Distortion, and that was pretty much it. Yeah. Although I think, wasn't TSOL from Orange County?
I don't know, but I know State
Yeah.
Fair is from here. Real Big Fish is from here. The what are they called? I can't remember the other one. But yeah, there was a few ska bands back in the mid '90s that came out of Orange County. I don't know how that happened, really. It just did.
Yeah, that's pretty trippy.
Oh, the Aquabats. They're from here
Oh
too.
yeah, I've heard of them. I
Yeah.
have heard of them, but I wasn't really aware. I guess because I was at that time I was in Los Angeles, so I didn't really. I was too focused on my thing, but that's really cool. So what else do you have coming up when you start back your show? Do you have any new bands or anything you're going to be doing that you're into?
Yeah. I don't know where to begin on that. Oh my God, there's so much awesome stuff that's come out. Off the top of my head, singer-songwriter Richard Orn from Sweden put out a record. It's one of those records that there's not a bad song. It's amazing. There's a band from England called Black Market Karma. They're kind of like a more shoegaze psychedelic. What else is there? Gosh, there's a couple bands out of Australia. One's called Hate Calamity, and another one's called Tina and the Hams. Tina and the Hams put out a record, and it's another amazing record. Really good. Every song is like excellent. There's the Kundalini Genie that I really like. What else? The Subsons. And let me see. I'm kind of like that a lot. Here's my latest playlist. So let's see what I've been. The latest Skytone. That's another band that I like a lot. Cadet A, the singer-songwriter out of New York by the name of Rob Monk. This other band called the Miniatures. They're awesome shoegaze band. And a band out of San Francisco called the Umbrellas. They're more of an indie pop sound. They're absolutely amazing. And I didn't tell you, which reminds me, Dave and I went to go see the Lemonheads, right?
Mm-hmm.
A couple weeks ago. And there was a band that opened for them that was amazing. And they were called, like of Being an Angel. I believe that was the name. And wow, they were like 1993 indie rock sound, like straight up.
Wow.
And after the Lemonheads were done playing, the band was at their merch table, and I said, "Hey man, you guys were like better than the Lemonheads. You guys are amazing." And I go, because they're young kids, they're probably like in their mid to late 20s. And I said, man, that was like 1994 all over again. You know, it was like you guys honed in on that era. And they were like, yeah, they're kind of happy, that I get it. And that's what they were going for. And I said, you guys sounded a lot like Eric's Trip and the Swirlies. And the bass player just goes, whoa, like I know my shit. And I go, you guys sound straight up like Eric's Trip and the Swirlies. And they goes, oh, we love that band. And that's a band from that time, that era that I was into, but no one really knew who they were unless you were plugged into that whole indie scene. And but yeah, this band of Being an Angel, it's wild. They're on this national tour with the Lemonheads. They're not on a label. they have no record out, just this little 3-song EP and T-shirts, and they're touring with the Lemonheads.
Wow, that's an awesome break for them.
I know, right? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that's cool though. That's very cool.
I was just
Well, you'll have to put all of these, you'll have to put together, send me these songs so we can do a playlist
I'll do that.
for this episode,
Yeah, I'll do that. There's some good stuff that's out.
And so anyway, why don't we let's see, when is your show is coming back in January, right?
Yeah, January 2nd, which would be a Tuesday. So that's when I start. And
is it on Mixcloud? Is that where people listen, or?
Yeah, you can find the Charles Motorbike Show on Mixcloud.com. All my archive, all my shows, 170 shows so far.
Okay.
Are up there.
And what about is the electronic thing? Do you guys plan to have an album out, or are you going to do something like that?
Yeah, when we get I think by the time we have 4 songs, we're going to by then, I think we're going to know what direction we're going to go. But also with the 4 songs, I want to, I know since doing this show, I know a lot of people with labels and all this stuff, to see if I could get them to release a full length for us. And I can get it played, but I think by, within our first 4 songs, I think we'll kind of know what direction as far as our sound goes and how it's going to go, because we don't really know until we're stuck in its infancy still, Yeah. And I'm really excited to see where this goes. And the cool part is neither one of us, we can't really do this live. It's out of the question. It's impossible. So we just want to record, just record electronic music, electronic songs, and just put them out, and just keep doing that.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Be interesting to hear it.
As far as my motorbike show, man, I'm ready to get behind the mic, man. I'm oh man, I'm missing it a lot, actually. Tonight actually it really hit me oh man, I'm ready to start doing the motorbike show. And I had so much fun doing on my live shows. I have a lot of loyal listeners that are on Mixcloud in the chat room all over the world, and it's 20 of us best friends getting together twice a week, and everyone's chatting with each other, from Russia to England to US, Canada, Ireland, Australia. They're all there,
Yeah.
And it's really cool. So I miss all those people.
Well, I guess they'll be back on the 2nd when you're back, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They'll be there.
People that didn't, I put out a flyer, a post on Twitter and Facebook, and I'm still getting people that are sending me messages hey, what happened to the motorbike show? I don't see any shows posted. Are you okay? Are you all right?
Yeah.
No, I'm taking some time off, man.
Well, that's cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on and chatting with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, dude.
No, it's always good. And you got some cool stuff going on, and you have to keep me posted about what's happening with you.
Yeah. Actually, I'll send you the song we finished.
Yeah, but you can't don't do the Facebook thing.
How can I send it to you?
Just send it off when we're not recording. I'll send you the email, and you can send it to my email, right? I'll have you do that, because that's a lot. That whole other thing, I couldn't even I don't know what happened to it. And I have someone who runs my social media, so a lot of times messages, It's always better to just email me.
Okay. Yeah. Text me your email or
I will.
your email.
And you have to. I figure I'm gonna probably drop this episode on Friday. We'll put this out. So, just get the playlist together.
Okay. By Friday.
That.
Okay.
And then before I go, I'm going to give my, what is it? Yeah. Well, thank everybody for listening, sharing, liking. If you're on YouTube, you can hear the show on Apple Music, Deezer, wherever you get podcasts. You can download it for free. And of course, thank you to Charles Motorbike.
Thank you,
coming
sir.
on, and you should definitely tune into his show that he does twice a week on Mixcloud. You'll be able to, if you go into the description, you'll find all his information there, and he will be back January 2nd. So, thanks, Charles.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it. Rock on.
Thanks for having me, man.
Of course, man. Have a happy holiday.
Okay.
The darkness
Sign off.
will turn to light. I'm your dirty secret tonight. Dream or not, and take a look inside.
The College of Rock and Roll Knowledge is a production of Ton Up Incorporated. Copyright 2022, Ton Up Incorporated.